Good. Good evening, everyone. Oh, nice and loud. This is like the loudest and best it's been. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome. We'd like to begin tonight in a spirit of prayer. So, on the back of your campaign booklets, there's a prayer, and if you would join me in that, I'd appreciate it. As together we pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, you are the source of all that is good and the giver of every perfect gift. We thank you for the vision you have placed within our hearts and the mission you have called us to fulfill. As we embark on this capital campaign, we acknowledge that without you, we can do nothing. But with you, all things are possible. Bless the work of our hands, the plans we make, and the resources we seek. Inspire generosity in the hearts of your people, and help us to give sacrificially, knowing that everything we have comes from you. Unite us in purpose and strengthen our commitment to building not just structures, but a community where your love is known and shared. Lord, we pray for wisdom to steward these resources well, patience for the journey ahead, and faith to trust in your timing and provision. May this campaign glorify your name, serve your people, and further the work of your kingdom here on earth. We dedicate this effort to you and ask for your blessing, guidance, and grace every step of the way. May our efforts reflect your love and bring honor to your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. It's a privilege to be with all of you this evening. This is the last of 5 campaign talks that we've been giving. We live streamed the first one. We are live streaming also this evening, and then that video will be made available to you if you'd like to review anything, or to our parishioners who are unable to be here at any of these 5 sessions. It's been my privilege over the last 8 months or so to work with a wonderful committee that's put together this campaign, as well as a lot of hard work and planning. And I'd like to introduce those members of the committee to you this evening. Amy Sanfilippo Stedman, who is here, she has been kind of leading our committee and doing a wonderful job. Bill Sheehan is our business manager at the parish. He's not here this evening, but has been doing a great job helping us with the financial part of this and figuring all of that out. Mr. Ken Miskovich, who is our school principal. Mrs. Mary Sack, who is our assistant school principal. Keith Benya, who is the director of maintenance here at the parish. Sarah Hopkins, who I don't know if Sarah is with us this evening. She is on the committee. Terry Burke, who is also on the committee, and Mike Keating. Those are the members of our committee. We have also been working with Jack Kearns, who is a fundraising expert, with helping us on that part of the campaign as well. And my hope this evening is to tell you a little bit of the history of this project, what we've come to and thought about and prayed over and looked to present to you today. And then I will present Mr. Kearns, who will talk a little bit about the financial piece of things and how you can help with this campaign by pledging. And then at the very end, we'll take any questions and answers that you might have. As you may remember, the Pray, Gather, and Play initiative was begun by Father Tim in 2019. Little did he know, or the committee know at that time, that we were on the beginning of a worldwide pandemic called COVID, and that would significantly affect operations in parish communities as well as the diocese and really the entire world at that time. So the initial thought of Pray, Gather, and Play was a threefold part. They were looking at building a new playground for our kids. They were looking at tearing down old garages and putting up new garages, as well as a pavilion and then a garden, a prayer garden in the back of our property. And so that campaign in 2019 successfully raised approximately $1.3 million. But before, as they were planning and as the campaign was kicking off, we discovered that there was a new ordinance by the city of Bay Village, and that we were required, before doing any further building, to put in drainage in the back of our property that was not anticipated. So that $1.3 million at the get-go was used to create and prepare for the future building, but it was done with the drainage in the back of our property. The old garages, which I think were almost original to the parish, were torn down, new garages were built, and we basically had about $100,000 left over that has now gone over to this campaign that we call Our Faith, Our Legacy. As we were preparing, we also knew that the school was preparing to celebrate the 75th anniversary of our parish school. And imagine the changes that people have seen throughout the years. I had the privilege to bring through the school to give a tour to a man whose name is Frank Roddy. Frank was in the third graduating class here at St. Raphael, and I happened to be sitting at dinner just by chance with him. We had a mutual friend. I said, "Frank, where did you grow up?" He said, "Bay Village." And I said, "You did?" He said, "Yep." He said, "I went to St. Raphael School. I was in the third graduating class." And I said, "Well, we're getting ready to celebrate 75 years. You graduated 73 years ago." And I said, "I'd love you to come to see the school, to give you a tour around, and to tell you about what we're doing and planning for the future." So Frank came last Saturday. He came with a friend of his whose name is Terry Kelly. All three of Terry's kids had come through St. Raphael, and Frank hadn't been here since probably the 1960s. So he just kept going through the hallway saying, "Wow, wow, wow." And he said to me that when he went to grade school here, only the primary grades classrooms were there. And he said that there were several grades in one classroom, and that the church was sort of where the infirmary is now, which is kind of where we call 5 Points, where 5 different hallways come together. And he says that was the initial church before they built the church here that was by this driveway, almost where we are today, and then this third church that was built and completed in 2015. And he was just amazed at what he saw. And he was also amazed at the vibrancy of our parish school. So when we thought about restarting the campaign, we wanted to look at it with new eyes, thinking about the 75th anniversary of our parish school and what we could do to honor it. So we looked at the project as it was initially proposed in Pray, Gather, and Play, and we came up with 4 component pieces. First of all would be the playground, and the playground expands the present footprint of our playground significantly. And in fact, it allows us to have a full grade level of kids on the playground at the same time. Right now, the kids have to play in shifts on the playground because we cannot fit about 75 kids on the playground. They have to go in shifts now. And the new playground will have a larger footprint and will be able to accommodate all of the children in one grade level at one time. Furthermore, the present material that is on the playground is consisting of a lot of mulch. As you may know, mulch isn't probably the safest thing. It's treated with chemicals, but besides that, we know that rodents and animals go in that mulch. The kids are playing in it, they're spreading it around, and it's sort of a landscaping nightmare. So we propose to put in what's called the pour and play, which is a different kind of surface that allows a little more bounce in the surface than asphalt does. It is going to protect our kids to play more safely on the playground, weather resistant, and all it will need is once in a while to spray it down if it doesn't rain, and then to blow off the leaves as they come. And the playground also, one of the things that we did in reimagining our playground is we were able to take the ideas from Pray, Gather, and Play and kind of build upon them for less money than originally was planned with Pray, Gather, and Play. Initially, they had looked at buying the equipment from a German company, and it was high-end equipment, and we were able to get the same high-end equipment from a U.S. company for a significantly smaller amount, which enabled us to not only get the equipment that we had hoped for, but it also allowed us to buy some additional pieces of equipment that are able to be used by kids who may have a handicap, or make it more accessible to kids who might not be able to climb some of the other equipment. So we were able to actually increase the amount of equipment, and we're using a really great firm that specializes in playgrounds. So they've done their research in terms of the surface that will be on the ground, in terms of the kind of equipment, and it was great because we were able to say to them, you know, we've got kindergarten kids through 8th grade kids. We want a playground that is inclusive for everybody, no matter what the grade level is, whereas some of the equipment that we presently have can only be used by the smaller kids because of the size of the equipment that we presently have. It had been initially our thought and my thought to be able to donate the equipment that we have, which is approximately 30 years old, but we were told that liability issues in moving that equipment and safety issues would preclude us from doing that successfully. So that was when we thought about what can we do to give back to somebody else who may not have the blessings that St. Raphael's has, and we put in that component of helping Metro Catholic School, which is on the site of St. Boniface Parish in Cleveland, and they do not have a playground at all, any playground equipment at all. They use the church parking lot that is all asphalt. I'm told by Mary Lou Toller that there's potholes in the playground in the surface of the asphalt lot. And we're proposing that we give a portion of what we collect, 7.5%, to help purchase some playground equipment. They can't purchase a lot simply because they don't have the land mass to be able to put it on, but they do have some grassy area, and that's part of our plan to be able to give back to others in need. And so that's the hope for Metro Catholic. The second large component was the pavilion. And the pavilion, in its initial plan, had a lot of bells and whistles, things like a big screen TV, a fireplace, that kind of jazz. And we simplified and value engineered this pavilion to make it a little bit more simple, a little less expensive, in fact, a lot less expensive, but that it could be added to if down the line we acquire the money to be able to do it, whether that is to enclose it or to put a fireplace in or to add the bells and whistles later on. It will have Wi-Fi capacity out there. It will seat approximately 250 people. Initially, I kept thinking to myself, let me think about the use of the pavilion. Last August, when we had our parish picnic, we had a great turnout for the parish picnic. And it was, but the day started out rainy, and it looked overcast. And you know how it goes with Cleveland. If it's going to be gray, it's going to be gray all day, right? So that's what we're thinking. So we bought a tent, we purchased or rented a tent for outside. We had everything ready to go outside. The rain came, we moved everything back inside, and then, of course, just as God would have it, the sun came out in the afternoon, and by that time we had already moved everything inside and we couldn't move everything outside again. The pavilion gives us some more flexible space to be able to use. Our kids will be able to use it as an outdoor classroom. For the kids who are not playing on the playground or waiting to play on the playground, they have a place to sit that's covered. For kids who want to bring their lunch outside and be able to eat lunch outside, they have that. Someone in the first meeting brought up to me the fact that her husband has not been to St. Raphael since COVID began. He's immunodeficient, so he cannot be in crowds, especially in a closed environment. But being in an open environment, he could do some things at the parish if those parish things were held in an open area, which is something that I hadn't even thought about in a post-COVID era. But it's the reality for some people, especially those whose immunity is compromised compromised in any way, shape, or form. So the pavilion seats about 250 people. As you can see, it fits in well to the blending of the brick and the roof line, similar to the parish as well. There won't be restrooms in the pavilion, but the proposal has to add 2 outdoor bathrooms to extend from the school. So they'll use the already existing plumbing there. Rather than having to bring plumbing to the pavilion, they'll use those, and they'll probably be used with key fobs so that the kids and people using the playground with permission would have access to those restrooms, but they probably won't be open. They won't be open past hours, and we'll make sure that our maintenance people lock those restrooms. I'm sure they'll be locked most of the time anyway, but those will be actually attached to the building. So that was component number 3, actually 2, and then the 3, we're looking at our parish offices. You may know that a number of years ago, and I don't know how many years ago it was, the parish offices moved to what was Dr. Ross's offices when I was a kid, and then became, I think, a dentist office and then law offices. So it's been an office of pain for a long time between the dentist and the law firm. But nonetheless, it is a place that was not built to be a parish building, and a couple of issues with it is that the meeting room space, which accommodates approximately 15 to 20 people, is smack dab connected to 2 of our parish staff offices, as well as pop-up offices for Andy Carrickey and also for Jack working in that same space. So every time that I have a funeral planning or I'm meeting with somebody, I have to kick Jack out, I have to kick Andy out, and I have people coming through the space to get to their offices. And it really is an awkward situation, especially when you're dealing with a family that's grieving, or you're dealing with a discipline issue with a kid at school and meeting with parents. It's just not a really great space for that. We do have an additional meeting room space on the 2nd floor, but it is not handicap accessible. The stairs are fairly steep, and there's no way to get up there except through a set of steep steps. Right now, Zach Jester has his office up there, and they use it as a youth meeting room, but it's really not accessible for anybody who may have trouble getting up and down the steps. So the proposal is to move that main meeting room space and to have it in the center of the building with all the other offices around it, so that the door can be closed, it's set off, and then not disturbed when people are sitting in a meeting in the parish offices. And then to do a little bit of work in the reception area. The reception area is pretty stark, but we're hoping to shush it up a little bit in the redoing of the parish offices. That is not a huge expense, but it's something that we're hoping to accomplish through the capital campaign. So I have to say that I, at the beginning, wasn't sure about the whole capital campaign. It's something that I, as a new pastor to St. Raphael, inherited. And so we met with the parish town hall meeting last April, and that was really well attended. We had probably about 300 people on that night in April when we met in the church. However, 700 people watched the live stream. So there was a big audience of people. One of the questions that people brought over and over and over again to me was, what about pray, gather, and play? And at that point in time, I had only been here for a few months, and I really needed to get a little more information on the history of it and where we are presently. And that's when we convened the committee together, and then have been working, studying, asking, and trying to come up with a plan for this campaign. And again, we changed the name to Our Faith, Our Legacy, because it really signifies what we're celebrating in 75 years of our parish school. The pavilion and the playground are not just school related, they're related for all the parish. They're not just for the use of the school, they're really for the use of everyone. One of my great delights is sometimes when I'm at the rectory and I'm looking out my window and I see kids playing on the playground here. When I was a kid, at St. Raphael, the parish was kind of the center of our existence in many ways. There was a softball field way out in the back, and used to play softball on that field. There were basketball courts. We did a lot of recreating here on the campus at St. Raphael, and this felt in some ways like my second home. And we hope to have that same inviting and welcoming atmosphere here at St. Raphael. We changed a little bit from the Pray, Gather, and Play, the idea of the prayer garden and back. And one of the realizations that we had was that it is really the only semblance of green space that we have left on this part of the campus. We have it obviously in the front of the campus, but we don't really have too much green space in the back, and we wanted to make sure that our kids had a green space to play at that was adjacent to the parking lot. And then the hope is to be able to enhance and to also encourage people to use the prayer garden that we already have. I love that prayer garden, that little kind of covered area in the middle with all the statues around. I rarely ever see anyone out there. So rather than creating a new space and taking away from the green space that we have in back, the idea was, how can we further enhance the prayer space that we already have that's really underutilized as a prayer space? It's great to walk by, and it's got windows all the way around it, but not many people use it. So that was kind of the idea of that. So that's what we came up with for the campaign, and then we've been working diligently for all those months since last April on trying to reconfigure and represent and figure out what do we do from here. And we're really excited about this project. We're hoping, God willing, to be able to break ground by the end of the school year, and then, God willing, be able to finish the playground and the pavilion to be open for the beginning of the school year. And that's the hope. And then we're hoping that we will be able to do a dedication ceremony that would invite not just our parishioners, but also all of our alumnus throughout the years. People like Frank Roddy, people like Patty Heaton and the Heaton family, people like the Adams who have been here forever and a day, and all the families that have been a part of this parish community and have helped to make it what it is, and to truly have a huge celebration at the dedication of the pavilion, the playground, and the offices as well. So that's where we are. Did I miss anything that you... I'm going to now introduce to you Mr. Jack Kearns, who is from Kearns & Associates and who is helping with the fundraising aspect of the project.
Thank you, Father. As Father mentioned, my name is Jack Kearns, and I'm a Catholic fundraising consultant. And for over 35 years, I've been helping Catholic institutions raise funds. I've worked with many parishes here in the Diocese of Cleveland. I've worked with religious orders and St. Vincent de Paul Society and hospitals and high schools, and a whole range of different types of fundraising that I've been involved in. And most of it touches Catholic people's lives, that are Catholic. City missions and food banks and a lot of the outreach that the church does. I've been associated with some of those types of campaigns. And our firm is associated with the International Catholic Stewardship Council and the National Conference of Catholic Bishops. And one of the advantages of that is that we're not a percentage type of firm. So whether the parish raises $2 million or $5 million or $10 million, the costs and expenses are already fixed. So there's no percentage involved in what we do. Everything has already been established. Over the last several years, I've worked with many, as I said earlier, many other parish campaigns here in the diocese. And one of the things that we study is the patterns of giving. And most Catholic parishes fall into certain patterns. And it's not only here in Cleveland, but I work, at one point I worked all over the country, but now I work primarily between Cleveland and Buffalo, which is my home, and then we go a little bit further east into Rochester and Syracuse. And so what we find in Catholic parishes, there's certain trends and patterns. And so when we came to St. Raphael, we looked at the patterns here, and they're very similar to the patterns at Church of the Resurrection in Solon, and St. Ignatius in Cleveland, and St. Helen in Newberry, and St. Robert and William in Euclid, and Holy Family in Stowe, and all the other parishes that I've been at recently. And what we typically find is that a parish really has around less than half of the active families usually contribute to a capital campaign. So we're anticipating, we have around 1,800 households that donate. From there, typically we can say half of you regular givers, or 50%, will support the campaign. But up to this point, we've already had 400 donors support the campaign from the beginning. So really, our overall objective now is to have at least another 400 households contribute or pledge in the area of around $5,000. So that's $20 a week, $1,000 a year over 5 years. From 400 households would, magically be $2 million. But of course, we know that life isn't that simple and things don't work that easily, because it's regardless of where the parish is located, the patterns are the same. And one of the things that many people are familiar with is the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. It's almost the same here. 20% of your donors represent 80% of the offertory, or 80% of the Catholic charities, or 80% of other campaigns. So that's pretty typical. And what we find is that there's those certain patterns that evolve. Since I know this ahead of time, based on what's happening here in other parishes, we know kind of how to put together the plan and what we're up against. But one of the things that we typically find is that, in a parish, the parish reflects the community. And in the community, some people are doing well, and they'll be able to jump on board right away and get the campaign rolling. There are other people who are kind of in the middle, and maybe they're struggling for different reasons. And then there's a certain percentage that usually don't participate at all, regardless. And because of that, what we find is that when you think about it, there are people that are with you here every week praying and worshiping, and sometimes people refer to it as the widow's mite. The people that are giving everything they already have, they're tithing. So they keep the heat going in the wintertime and the lights on. But when a capital campaign comes along, there may not be that much left over in their budget. Capital campaigns are for extraordinary needs, so therefore a lot of people may not have that much left over in their budget, for the capital campaign. Sometimes people are facing health issues. Other people are facing economic or job issues. So when you think about it, as I said, since the parish reflects the community, everybody's in a different spot in life. Everyone's facing different challenges. So what we basically ask is that for those of you who are in a position to support the campaign, if you could base your support over when you consider your faith experience and a lifetime of blessings, and then arrive at what your pledge could be for the parish. And if that happens, we know we'll be very successful. So what I would like to do at this time is walk you through the brochure. When you came into the community room this evening, you received your own campaign brochure, your own pledge card, and a confidential return envelope. And what we're asking is you take the material home in the privacy of your own residence, think and pray about how you can help your parish at this time. So as we open up the booklet, one of the things we see is the letter from Father Dan. And in there he talks about making a pledge. And so it's already come to my attention from people that said, we want to help, we want to pledge, but we can't afford the $5,000 or $20 a week, $1,000 a year. I said, whatever you can pledge based on your own ability is important, and you come up with that number. However, what we also know, a lot of times in campaigns, people want some guidance. They need some benchmarks to work off of. And so what we came up with here is, in general, if parishioners were to pledge in the area of $20 a week, $1,000 a year for 5 years for $5,000, that would go a long way to helping us meet that goal. In the benchmark that I'm referring to, obviously we've worked in many other parishes where it has worked out well, whether it was St. Ignatius last spring over in Cleveland, or it's St. Helen down in Newberry, whether it's Church of the Resurrection in Solon, Holy Family in Stowe. So we kind of have a perspective on how to approach this, on what has already worked here in the diocese very recently. And that's the overall emphasis on why we're asking for a pledge. And when you think about it, when you look around this parish campus, it's very extensive. It's a beautiful campus. There's a lot here. There's all kinds of meeting rooms and recreational space and worship space. And all that really came about through a pledge program over the long history of the parish. Over the years, parishioners pledged previously to provide what you have now. So it's pretty common, and that's why we're also emphasizing that. And then as you move along on the next page, on page 3, you see the items that the campaign is going to address. Where is the money going? Father he gave you that synopsis, and that's how the funds will be utilized. And then as we continue on page 5, we have the, again, we have that breakdown of that $5,000 pledge level that some are going to be thinking about. And what we find is that the foundation of all successful parish capital campaigns is really built on equal sacrifice, not equal giving. Because again, everyone's been blessed in a different way and blessed uniquely, but not everybody has the same financial wherewithal or the same ability. So that's kind of the concept that we like to promote: equal sacrifice, not equal giving. And again, that I think is one of the ways, one of the roadmaps to success. And then on the opposite page, we have the different giving levels. And what this is, it's a wide range of giving options. So what we're presenting to parishioners is that we know to be successful, as I said earlier, we have that benchmark at $5,000. If we could average from 400 households to 5,000, we could get to that 2 million. But one of the things to keep in mind is that since the objective is to have an average at 5,000, we will need pledges above that as well, because we will have people who will pledge at $500, $1,000, $2,000, $750. So conversely, we will need pledges above the 5,000 so that at the end of the day, they meet in the middle and they even out. And one of the things that we find out is that oftentimes in these parish capital campaigns is people will say, we know how that works because we were approached by, Ohio State or John Carroll or Notre Dame, and they asked us for a major gift to help set the pace for their campaign, because we know that at the end of the day, that's how campaigns work, by having some numbers at the major gift level, some in the middle, and then some will be below that. And my responsibility to the parish, it's kind of a reality check, is to let the parishioners know that things aren't perfect, and it's not going to be as easy as every family giving the same amount. That's not realistic. That's why we have a wide range of giving options, and we don't also want to put a ceiling on anyone's generosity, because sometimes what we find is it's a special time in someone's life and they want to give something or make a pledge in honor of a family member, or maybe for a special blessing received. And this would be a perfect opportunity to do that. So on the next page, we'll share with you some of the memorials that we have and some of the reasonings behind that. But that's the overall philosophy, and that's our what we call, the levels and the logic to a successful campaign are on page 6 there. Shows you there's a wide range of giving opportunities. And as I said, we're not saying anybody must pledge at any certain level. That's your decision. Our philosophy is you see what's needed. This is my responsibility, is to show you what's needed, and then you figure out where you can fit in, again, based on where you stand at this point. And then on page 7, we show some naming and memorial opportunities. And those memorials do not actually reflect the dollar amount associated with the item. And so, but what we can say is that at this point, we do have somebody who is making a memorial gift for the pavilion in honor of a family member. So that somebody already stepped up to the plate to kind of create that momentum and enthusiasm for this campaign by donating at that level, but for that particular cause. So the dollar amounts don't reflect what the item costs. It's based on the desirability. And again, it's kind of a roadmap and shows people, gives them some guidance on some of the gifts that would be needed to be successful. And then we have donor giving clubs, which are pretty common. Many people are familiar with giving clubs. They're part of almost all campaigns. And then on page 9, we talk about different ways that people can give. Most people will just pledge it out, and they'll budget it out over time, and that's how they'll fulfill their pledge. But some people are in a different spot. Some people will donate securities, appreciated stock. Maybe they've had something that has grown over the years, and now they, rather than cash the stock in and be subject to capital gains taxes and things like that, they may want to transfer some of that to the parish as part of their gift. And that's something that a number of people have already inquired about and are doing. The other thing that's becoming very common these days is gifts from an RMD. So if you're 70 and a half or older, you can give a qualified charitable distribution from an IRA. And usually what we find is that people have worked hard all their lives, they've saved and they've been frugal, and they have a very comfortable nest egg. And now when they start to take the money out, which they are required to by law, it pushes them into sometimes different categories. Sometimes it can affect on how much Social Security is taxed. Sometimes it can affect on how much they pay for their health insurance premium. And a lot of times they're looking for ways to avoid that, because when they take the money out, it goes on top of their income. But if they transfer it to the campaign and to the church or the parish, then they would avoid that type of addition to their taxes. So there's a lot of different ways that people can give, and we can answer questions about that later or individually. But we're finding that it's more common today for people to donate stock and donate through their IRAs. And then, but most people would pledge it out over time. And so one of the things that I just will close with before we open up the floor for questions is that in one of the campaigns I've had recently, it was in Pittsburgh, Mount Washington, up at St. Mary of the Mount, and we had a campaign for their new parish center. And at the end of one of these meetings, a couple came up to me afterwards and they said, you know, Jack, we're kind of in that sweet spot in life. You know, we've worked hard, we're in a good spot now, but when we came to St. Mary's, we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. And we had 3 kids, and they were enrolled in school. And at the time, the school was building a gym. And we really couldn't support the gym at the level we wanted, and it always kind of stuck with us. But now, you know, the kids are out of the house, they're out of college, they're married, our business is doing well, everything is good. So we kind of know what you're talking about with that sweet spot. So they decided that they were going to make a leadership gift to their parish because of the blessings they received throughout a lifetime. And again, most importantly, it was because they were in that special, unique situation where, 30 years ago when they started enrolling their kids into school, they never envisioned they would be in that place. So we find that in most parish capital campaigns, parishioners, as I said earlier, are often approached by other institutions, whether it's a university or hospital or high school, and they're asked for leadership gifts, and they know the role that those gifts play. And I've talked to many of these donors over the years, whether they've given to Ohio State or Notre Dame or John Carroll or Walsh. And one of the things that's common is they'll say, but my parish is the most important thing to me. Yes, I went to this university or this high school, I've been part of this hospital, but this is where my faith experience lives. This is what's most important to me is my parish. And so then they decide that at that point they will also do something for their parish as well, because they can see immediately the return on their pledge and their gift, because the timetable on this is pretty aggressive. Hopefully by next fall everything is done out there. And one of the ways that we hope that can be accomplished is through these meetings, because on March 2nd is Commitment Sunday. And before Commitment Sunday, we would love to be able to announce that we're at 50% of the goal. And one of the ways that can happen is if we can get the participation from these receptions, we will be on a good path, because what people in the beginning, people are usually skeptical of a campaign, but once it starts to get its legs underneath it, starts to roll, then people kind of become more involved, and we create what we call the bandwagon effect and get everybody involved. So if we can create the momentum and enthusiasm through these meetings, by the March 2nd, if we're at the $1 million, I think a lot more people will probably want to participate, and maybe it's more than 400 donors. Maybe it's 500, maybe it's 600. But that's our overall approach and what we're asking you to consider over the next week or so. Maybe on the weekend when you come back to Mass, if you can put your pledge card in that confidential envelope, fine. If it takes a little longer, that's fine as well. And if you have any questions about donating and transferring from a RMD or securities or anything like that, you can approach us individually as well. So I think at this time we'll open up the floor for questions.
Thank you. Questions?
I got one.
Sure.
So if you get 500 people that pledge $5,000, you get $500 down from each of them, that's 25 grand. And how much do you need to get the project started? Because if $25,000 comes in over the next few months, where are we going to be?
Sure. So that's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. We are hoping to have the groundbreaking by this spring. And there are flexible ways of doing things. I am not a person who likes to go into debt. So when I was the pastor of Holy Angels in Bainbridge, I got called to go there. I had not applied for the place. and they told me, oh, by the way, there's a $4.75 million debt. What? $4.75 million debt. Our mortgage payment each month was $27,000, which was really difficult. We worked very hard to be able to pay it off. We paid it off early, but I don't like to take huge amounts of debt. There are some financing things that we can do from some of the savings that has been set for certain funds in the parish that we can borrow from, and we would pay back to, like the rainy day fund and those other kinds of things. So we have some ways that we're hoping that we'll be able to get the project off the ground, but we're hoping to have enough in pledges to be able to at least start the project, and that's the hope in this spring. Does that answer your question?
Father, let me just add to that. Sure. So one of the things, even though it's a 5-year pledge program, within 1 year, at least 50% of the money will be here in cash. And that's the way it has worked in other parishes, whether we've raised, in Newberry at $6 million and Resurrection at $5 million. Within 1 year, 50% of the money is in cash, because sometimes people who are making gifts through gifts of securities and things like that, they kind of front load their gift because it works for them better in a certain year. So that's what we find is the pattern.
Great. In the back, Jenny.
Hey, Father, thank you. So if we do raise enough money and they break ground, will they start while school is still in session, or will you wait until school is out in June?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that,
So there's two different timelines right now that Carey Construction's been talking about. And one is to start after Easter, which would end construction by the opening of school next year. And then the opposite would be to start a little bit later at the end of the school year, and then we would probably open up the pavilion and playground sometime in mid-September. So that's also, the conversation revolves around when he would be able to get materials and contractors on site once the contract is signed.
Thank you.
Karen?
Just a question, it's not about fundraising, but with having the playground equipment and all of these things, what is our liability for after hours, where it's all open to whoever can come?
Yeah.
Or we get some kind of security?
That's a great question, Karen. So we have maintenance here until 10 o'clock every night, except for Saturdays and Sundays. So the normal maintenance crew will be here. We're planning to put security cameras on the facility, just as we have on our school building. And frankly, today the playground is open all the time anyway, so it doesn't really add any additional liability. Our insurance policy is carried by the diocese. The diocese is self-insured, and so we don't think that there will be any liability change in terms of the parish, anything that we don't already have. One of the advantages, I just think about Holy Angels in Bainbridge was on 64 acres of land. And when you got to the church, there were no visible neighbors anywhere around. And so we were broken into one November 1st, I'll never forget it, was All Saints morning at 3 a.m. in the morning. There was a break-in and nobody heard anything, nobody saw anything because it was so remote. Here, we really have residents around 3/4 of our playground and parish grounds. We've not had a problem so far, at least since I've been here. Not saying that it couldn't happen, but we at least have visibility from residents on 3 streets that surround the property, which is a little different than having a park that is set way in the woods with nobody else around. So I think the liability would pretty much remain the same. The bathrooms were brought up, but we're hoping to have some sort of either a key lock or a fob lock so that those would be locked most of the time. But in a parish picnic or in outdoor events or outdoor meetings, playground time, those restrooms would be open.
Mm-hmm. How does that affect the park?
4 spots would be lost.
4 spots.
Yeah. So if you want to park in my driveway, I think I can fit 4 cars in the driveway. Yeah, reserve sign. Actually, some days I think to myself, we'd be able to make a mint if we had valet parking here. Golly, it's something else. Yes?
Are you
Jeff?
looking for anything besides monetary, time or talent, for example?
Yeah, the project itself, that's a very good question, and it was brought up at one of our committee meetings, but you have all of the stuff with liability and all that jazz. Where we probably could use manpower would be in the office renovation more than the playground equipment, just because the surfaces need to be poured professionally, the playground equipment needs to be installed correctly. Believe you me, somebody gave me a, one of those things that you cook stuff in, a smoker. And I had 45 minutes to try to put together the first two pieces. So I'm definitely not the person that's going to oversee any building whatsoever. It's not my talent, but, and that's why I think that for at least these two projects, you need the professionals. But when it comes to the parish offices, whether it's painting, carpet installation, those kinds of things, we might be able to use that kind of manpower help. It's just an interesting thing. Mr. Mistovich and I went over to St. Aloysius today, and that's the kind of a place that really needs manpower work because they have an old church building, they have old buildings that need maintenance and cleaning and painting, and that stuff never seems to end there. So those are great opportunities for that. Our building, at least so far, is really well maintained. We don't have those kinds of projects. These two things, I think, have to be handled by the professionals, but when it comes to the parish offices, there's probably a lot that could be done over there, volunteer work to spruce up what we have.
You mentioned additional build-out of the plaza. It would be nice to have. Have you identified what kind of cost would, and I guess the second question is, if March 1st, you have a target for $1 million. If you're at $1.5 million, do you know where you would look to spend, or would you keep the campaign going?
We would keep the campaign going. We would keep the campaign going. And here's the deal, like our finance council has looked at this, and we have some funds that we have that are not in restricted accounts, but are earmarked for certain things, like the maintenance of our buildings. Or we do have a school endowment that is strictly for scholarships, but there's another fund that we could borrow from if those pledges were made and we didn't have the cash in hand, that we could literally, the parish could loan itself the money and then pay it back. So
I was saying just the opposite.
okay.
If you look, this is very successful, now
Got
you're
it.
exceeding the 2. Have you identified what the costs are to make the addition you want to the
Got it.
plaza? And would you keep it going if you could get to $2.2 million, which?
Sure. Yeah, there are a couple of things that we could do. First of all, we know that the building could be added on, the fireplace could be added, the TVs could be added. Much of that stuff is more aesthetic stuff than it is structural. So what we would want to make sure is that, sometimes people have talked about enclosing the space, which St. Clarence did, but they didn't do that in their original building. It was years later when they were able to get the money to be able to do that, but that is possible with the structure that we would have. We would go back to the construction company, we would ask for renderings to be able to add those things on, but we could do that.
Okay, so you haven't identified.
How much the cost would be? No. To add on those things? No. But I was with somebody on Saturday night who said, figure out the cost of the fireplace and we'll donate the fireplace. So there are people like that who will say, if there's a specific thing that we can add on that we don't have the plan for now, we might be able to do that. So we definitely will look at that if we are able to be successful. Yes?
Has any thought been given to approaching local businesses about temporary or permanent gaming rights? Like Chick-fil-A Pavilion.
Chick-fil-A Pavilion. I think that's for the birds. No, just kidding. Get it, Chick-fil-A, the birds. But anyways, we have not really done that. I don't know if that how that would go. We really haven't considered that. I don't know whether local businesses, so often it's hard to get money for a local project that is for just a particular community rather than a healthcare system or something that's larger where they get more money for their buck when they're doing something bigger. But it is something that we haven't really considered. But if you know a business that you think might be interested, we certainly would be willing to talk to anybody to see what we might be able to do. We do think that for our kids and for our future, it's a really great thing. I have to say that right now, we're in a really good spot to be able to put in some capital improvements into our property. And I say that because we are probably in the most generous state when it comes to funding charter schools and non-public schools. Right now, with Ed Choice, we have 80% of our students are receiving Ed Choice money, which they were not receiving last year or even the year before at that time. The parish traditionally has subsidized the school. It's varied every year depending on the budget and income and offertory, and it goes anywhere from like $200,000 to $400,000 in a given year that's given as subsidy. Right now, the school is operating in the black on its own, so we don't have to give that subsidy. It was one of the reasons that when we looked at air conditioning for the school, the second floor of our junior high wing is so hot. The sun comes in the particular side and the kids boil and the teachers boil. And so we looked at what the cost of putting in air conditioning just in the second level would be. When we looked at the whole cost, Father Tim had gotten a bid years ago for $1.4 million to put in air conditioning through the school because it was the ductwork that had to be put in. We did a different system with the split air conditioning units, and it was $270,000 for the entire school, a fifth of the cost of what it would have cost years ago if we had done that duct work. So we really were smart in being able to utilize some of the money that we've saved in subsidizing the school to put it back into a capital expenditure that we wouldn't have had the money for had we not been in this time where we've got the Ed Choice money. The other thing that I would just advertise to you is that right now the state of Ohio is offering what's called the Angel Scholarship Fund, which means that you can give a donation to St. Raphael's School for $750 per person, $1,500 per couple. And that can be retroactive to 2024 taxes. You get that money back on your state taxes, the entire amount. So it's not just a deduction, it's a free gift from the state. And you make the donation to St. Raphael and the entire amount comes back to you. St. Helens in Newberry has a small parish community. They're sort of a country parish. Their school, I just think, has one classroom per grade, but they are tuition free right now, because they did a great job with promoting this Angel Scholarship Fund, and the number of the kids that qualify for the tuition education choice vouchers, they're able to offer no tuition to their kids at the school. And they're putting on a $6 million addition to the school, which is almost completely pledged for already, which is really pretty amazing for given a small parish. They're building, they had an old barn, you can imagine, Geauga County. They had an old barn that was their church, and then they put classrooms into that old barn. The old barn has been condemned now, and they have to tear it down, so they have to replace the classrooms that they had in the barn, and that's what they're able to do. So we're at kind of that point where if we're looking at capital campaign money to be put back in, not capital campaign, capital expenditures, this is really a good time to do it because we don't know how long those tuition credits will be available to us. It's an interesting time. But who knows, spin the wheel and you might come up with a different thing tomorrow, I don't know. But we're at least right now, this is kind of what we're looking at. And, you know, we've been working with the school, and to be able to have the school in the black for the first time in I don't know how long has been a great gift to the parish in many ways, and has been able to help us to do some things that we've been wanting to do, but just didn't have the money to do. Any other questions? Great. Well, we're around, so if you have any other questions, and I want to thank Pete and Kathy Winzig, have done the hospitality for every one of these meetings. And thank you very much for all that you've done. You've been a real gift and a blessing to us. You know, and it's really nice because they've come to 5 meetings, they're going to pledge $25,000, so $5,000 for each of the meetings. Is that correct? Right. So thanks very much. There's more refreshments over there. Jack is here. I'm here. Some of our committee members are here. Please feel free to hang around, ask questions. And once again, thank you so much for your generosity, and thank you so much for being dedicated to St. Raphael.